Imagine a death without bloodshed, without screams, without physical pain, yet far more terrifying than any form of torture humans have ever devised. It is the death of oblivion. You are still breathing, your heart is still beating, but the world has decided that you no longer exist. Your name is erased from every document, your presence is denied, and you slowly dissolve into nothingness while you are still alive. This is not a script for a modern psychological horror movie, but a brutal historical reality that took place in 1480 under the reign of the mighty Ottoman Empire. The victims were not warriors or criminals, but 22 frail women nuns who chose faith over life. What really happened inside the cold walls of Topkapi Palace? And why, after more than 500 years, did scratches on marble make archaeologists shudder in horror? Welcome to one of the darkest chapters in history, where humanity was just a cover for a perfect crime. Turn back time to the fateful evening of the 15th of October 1480, in Larissa, Greece. The evening bell of the convent of St. Sophia suddenly fell silent. Normally, this was the hour of prayer, the hour of peace, but today, silence draped over the convent, heavy as lead. Inside the ancient limestone walls, 22 nuns stood frozen. They weren't looking at the crucifix, they were looking out the window. In the distance, on the hills where sheep usually grazed, red crescent banners now fluttered. Thick black smoke billowed from the valley, carrying the acrid smell of burning wood and the metallic tang of iron that had just tasted blood. Sister Ilani, the eldest of the convent, clutched her silver crucifix so tightly her knuckles turned white. She didn't tremble from fear of death. Death was a door to God, a release. What chilled her to the bone was the way the Ottoman army was approaching. No wild war cries, no thundering war drums, only silence, a silence full of calculation and death. The convent of St. Sophia was not just a place of worship. Founded in 1380, it was considered the last stronghold of the surviving Byzantine heritage. The nuns here were not simple peasant women, they were intellectuals, keepers of ancient manuscripts, precious icons, and the knowledge of a fallen empire. Sister Ilani, who had arrived here at the age of 16 after her entire family was massacred, was a master linguist. She could write ancient Greek, Coptic, and Latin so beautifully that Venetian merchants traveled from afar just to commission her work. To the younger nuns, Ilani was not just a leader, she was a reluctant prophet. She had the ability to smell danger in the slightest changes in the air, and right now, her intuition told her they would not be killed, they would be taken, and the fate awaiting them was worse than death. But was spiritual preparation enough to face the nightmare about to crash down on them? And then, the convent gates flew open, but the scene that followed left Sister Magdalena, the youngest at just 18, stunned. There were no bloodthirsty soldiers rushing in to rape or kill. Instead, it was an army that was strangely orderly. Leading the way were not executioners wielding swords, but officials holding ledgers and quill pens. They were the auditors of the empire. To the Ottomans, this conquest was not looting, it was asset recovery. And horrifically, these 22 nuns were considered assets. They were not treated as enemies, nor were they viewed as human beings. They were rounded up, measured for height and weight, and checked for teeth and health. The officials meticulously recorded details into thick books. Who could read? Who could embroider? Who knew medicine? In the eyes of the empire, they were simply high-value commodities. In the archives, they were coldly designated 22 consecrated virgins of educational value. Their destination was not the execution ground, but a special re-education center deep underground in Topkapi Palace. The 7-day march to the port of Volos was an ordeal of absolute silence. Imagine being chained by the ankles, walking dozens of miles, surrounded by guards, yet no one speaks a single word to you. They feed you, give you water, but absolutely do not communicate. They look right through you as if you are air. This was the first psychological strike, stripping away the victim's social existence. Sister Damaris, who once led the choir with an angelic voice, now only dared to mouth hymns in her throat when night fell. They realized that the Ottoman Empire didn't want to kill their bodies. It wanted to kill their souls and identities. When herded into the hold of a merchant ship crammed with hundreds of women from Bulgaria, Serbia, and Albania, the stench and fear filled the cramped space. But in the darkness of that hold, a terrifying truth was revealed. They were not random victims. They were part of a massive social experiment. After 12 days adrift at sea, they docked in Constantinople, the heart of the empire, once the glittering capital of Christendom, but they didn't get to see the city's sunlight. They were taken straight into the underground dungeon system of Topkapi Palace. Contrary to the filthy dungeons often seen in stories, this place was suspiciously clean. The floors were paved with cold but polished marble. They were issued clean new clothes, bathed every 3 days, and fed 3 delicious meals a day. They were even provided with paper and ink. However, there was one supreme rule: absolutely no religious symbols, no crucifixes, no Bibles, no praying. The Ottoman Empire was playing an extremely high-level psychological game. They wanted to prove that they were benevolent, civilized rulers, far superior to the god these nuns worshipped. This material comfort was the sweet poison designed to break the will to resist. On the 5th day, the attack officially began. A high-ranking official appeared with a translator and an imam. No whips, no threats. He made an offer that sounded more like a lucrative business deal than a religious ultimatum. "If you convert to Islam," he said in a calm voice, "you will be freed immediately. Each of you will receive 500 gold dinars as a dowry, be given a home in Constantinople, and be married to prosperous merchants. A life of silk and velvet, escaping imprisonment, escaping asceticism." It was a terrible temptation for young girls who had lived too long in poverty. All eyes turned to Sister Alani. She stood there, frail but steadfast as a rock. After a long silence, she spoke in Greek, her voice so calm it made the official shudder. "We are the brides of Christ. We are already married." The refusal was gentle, but hard as a slap in the face of the empire. The official was not angry. He simply nodded, made a note in his ledger, and left. The line added to the cold file read, "Refused voluntary conversion. Proceed to Phase 2. And Phase 2 was hell on earth. No one beat them. The guards simply stopped acknowledging their existence. Food was slid through a slot without a word. Every question they asked fell into the void. They became ghosts in their own room. Total social isolation is the cruelest form of torture for the human psyche. For women used to living in a community, sharing every prayer, this forced silence was like acid, slowly corroding the brain. They began to lose the concept of time. Day and night blended into one. The empire wanted them to go mad, wanted them to kneel and beg just to hear a human voice. But they underestimated the strength of these women. In the darkness of the marble dungeon, a silent uprising began. The nuns transformed their cell into the world's smallest cathedral. No crucifix, they used their own bodies as temples. Sister Magdalena, with her photographic memory, became the living Bible. She whispered every chapter, every verse of the New Testament for her sisters to hear. Sister Damaris conducted the choir using sign language. A light touch on the shoulder meant begin the Kyrie. 2 quick blinks meant the Gloria. They sang in silence, the melody resonating in the synchronized minds of 22 people. Sister Alani celebrated masses that lasted for hours without making a sound. And, boldest of all, they began to use their fingernails, the only weapon left to carve tiny crosses into the joints of the marble slabs. The carvings were so small the guards couldn't see them, but large enough for them to feel that God was with them. The peak of resistance came that winter. Sister Margarina, yearning to write, did the unthinkable. No paper? She tore strips of cloth from her tunic. No ink? She mixed damp soil from the floor with her own blood. Margarina secretly used sharp stones to cut her fingertips, saving every drop of blood to write. On those tattered scraps, she copied gospel fragments, childhood hymns, and prayers composed right there in captivity. It wasn't a diary. It was evidence, proof that they had lived, endured, and never bowed down. Those blood-written lines contained a terrible spiritual power, a silent declaration of war sent to the mighty empire above. But every secret is eventually exposed. During a surprise inspection in December, guards found these blood-stained cloths. They were taken straight to the Grand Vizier's office. Upon seeing the scraps covered in blood-written script, the Ottoman official felt not anger, but fear. He realized that the plan for brainwashing and re-education had failed completely. These women were not just resisting, they were documenting the empire's failure. This was unacceptable. A great empire could not be defeated by a handful of weak nuns. And so, the cruelest order was issued: total erasure. Phase 3 began with quiet disappearances. One morning, Sister Agatha was gone. The next day, it was Sister Clara, then Sister Theodora. The guards lied that they were moved for medical treatment or to better quarters, but those who remained knew the truth. Their sisters were being liquidated, one by one. The air in the dungeon became thick with the scent of death. Whenever someone vanished, the remaining ones didn't cry aloud. They added that person's name to the night prayer. Every sister who departed became a saint in their secret church. They carved the initials of the lost ones next to the tiny crosses on the stone walls. The fear of death had vanished, replaced by a strange resilience. They knew they would die, but they were determined to leave a mark. In January 1481, a new sultan ascended the throne. To consolidate power and cleanse the administration, he ordered a purge of unproductive elements. A final report was drawn up on this special group of prisoners, 8 remaining subjects: unconvertible, classified as irrecoverable. Their fate was sealed with a cold signature on administrative paperwork. What happened next was darker than any public execution. They weren't taken to the scaffold to be beheaded, as an example. They were simply deleted. In the vast archives of the Ottoman Empire, where everything from the weight of spice sacks to the number of camels was meticulously recorded, the entry for these 22 nuns ended with the line, "Irrecoverable elements removed. Process closed. No date of death. No execution record. No burial file." They were thrown into the pit of history as if they had never existed. The empire believed it had won. They had wiped out every trace of this resistance, but they forgot one thing. Marble has a better memory than ink. Over 400 years passed. The Ottoman Empire collapsed. In 1923, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk founded the Republic of Turkey and began the process of modernization. Topkapi Palace, once the symbol of absolute power, became a museum. During the renovation of the abandoned chambers under the second courtyard, workers broke through a sealed wall, and what they found shocked the world. On the surface of the cold marble slabs, beneath layers of dust, were dozens of tiny, crooked crosses carved by human fingernails. On the floor, mixed in the dirt, lay rotten linen scraps still faintly showing lines of dark brown Greek letters, the color of blood dried for centuries. And in one corner, carved deeper than all the rest, was a short but haunting Latin message: "Non sumus oblite," we are not forgotten. Sister Alani was right. The empire could imprison her body, could kill her and her sisters, could erase their names from every ledger, but it could not erase their souls. Their message, carved with blood and fingernails into the very heart of the enemy's palace, outlived the reigns of the mightiest sultans. The Ottoman Empire ruled 3 continents for 6 centuries, possessed the most powerful army in the world, but ultimately failed before a handful of Greek nuns. They turned the enemy's prison into history's greatest cathedral, because some silences echo louder than thunder, and some absences weigh heavier than 1,000 bodies. The story of the 22 nuns of Street Sophia is the most powerful testament to the strength of faith and free will. What do you think about the way they chose to face death? In that situation, would we have the courage to carve our names into stone instead of kneeling? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to join me in uncovering the darkest corners of human history in the next videos. Goodbye, and see you again.